Hey friends, I'm Daniel Nesbitt and welcome back to Designing a Revival Typeface. In the last episode we made some good progress by continuing to build on our control characters and designing some similar letters to those control characters. And in today's episode we're going to keep that going a little bit, particularly with some uppercase characters. Maybe if we have a little bit of time we can dive into a few new characters as well. But before we dive into designing any kind of characters, I want to jump in and talk a little bit more about type testing. Alright, so last week we were using a type testing tool in the browser, and I've got that one up on the page here. And basically the way this one worked is that you're able to export a typeface and you drag the font file in here and it generates a type proof. And that works well if you have pretty much all of your characters completed. But in our case, we're not quite to a full alphabet on either the upper or lowercase yet. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about Wordomat. And I've got my letters that I've designed here pre-selected, so we're gonna cut that part out a little bit here, but I wanted to talk about the plugin itself. So the reason I wasn't using this in last episode is that I was having a little bit of trouble with Python on my computer, so I've got all of that sorted out. If you don't play around with Python in your free time, that's probably nothing you have to worry about. As of this recording, I'm using, I think, Python 2.7. It's the default one that comes with Mac, and if you haven't played around with Python on your computer, you should be able to install this and have it work just fine. But with that out of the way, basically what Wordomat does here is we can go through and we can select the characters that we have designed and then generate text from that. So it's only going to find words and sentences that use the letters we have and nothing more and nothing less. So when I open this up here, mine automatically defaults to 20 words. Each word should have between 4 and 20 letters. We can use any language. We're not going to change the case, and I believe I have this selected because I'm selecting the upper and lowercase letters here, so it's just going to pick from that. The next one we have here is only use selected glyphs. There are a couple of other options here. Again, if you're a little bit further into your typeface, you might be able to leverage one of those instead of having to go through and select them all. There are additional things here too where we can require letters in each word or in each groupings of words, but we're not going to worry about any of that right now. So this is pretty much the default what you get when you open this plugin up. So if I click Make Words, it's going to do a little bit of generating here, and we'll close that out. And there we go. This is our typeface using only letters that I have designed so far. And the reason that I like this, especially at this point in the process, is for things like spacing. And I mean that in both the figurative and literal sense, so I can pull up the space character here, and maybe I go and adjust that a little bit. And it's kind of nice because we can go through and we can figure out, you know, how wide does our space need to be. Which the rule of thumb, I guess I've never really, like, quote-unquote designed a space letter or character on the channel, but more or less we want just enough separation between words that you know it's a space, but not too much. And we'll go through and we'll just do this real quick so you can kind of see. We'll just pick something outrageous, like 800 here. We don't want like any rivers floating through the text. So basically we're just looking for just enough space, and you can kind of use your eye to determine what that is. For now I'm going to stick with about 250. I think that should be fine. As I go, because it's a space character, there's actually no design to it. I can kind of go and adjust this with some ease. But the other nice thing about this is that we can kind of go through and start to actually proof this a little bit as well. And in my case, because this is a revival typeface, I'm probably not going to have a set of problems, say, similar to if you were designing your own typeface, you were going to do an original design. And what you're looking for there is just kind of an even color in the typeface. You'll hear that a lot from graphic designer, or from type designers, I should say. But basically what that is that there's no like blobs where a letter feels thicker or thinner or maybe non-existent in different places. So this is kind of a handy way to do that. You can also get a feel for the rhythm of the typeface, how is it progressing, and just kind of helps you spot things as you go. I do recommend using something like Wordomat because we design letters to be used in words and sentences, paragraphs, or even on the flip side, if you're doing a display typeface, in short bursts of text like headlines or logos. So it's always good to be proofing your typeface as you intend to have it be used. If you take nothing else away from this series, make sure that one is it. But as I'm looking at this here, I think we're looking pretty good. I will point out there's a word torf here. I'm not even sure what language that is, but you will notice things like this, where obviously spacing really isn't going to do a whole lot for us at the moment. This would probably end up being a kerning pair at some point. So I'm going to avoid really paying a whole lot of attention to things like that. But if we jump down to the next line here, where you've got things like oleo or minim, you know, these are words or letters that aren't really going to need as much kerning, probably no kerning at all. So things like that we can kind of judge our spacing a little bit more on and determine if the spacing is working for this typeface. So the other thing I will point out real quick too that I sometimes do is if I go through and I just copy and I paste this into not the preview panel, let's get the text window is what I wanted, and I just click too quickly here. Text preview, there we go. What's nice about this is we can go through and we can preview our text in this as well. So I believe in order to do that, I also, oh, there it goes. Sometimes it has a little bit of trouble popping up. But what's nice about this window then is I can actually switch out of our window in the background there. But I can go through and I can actually select the point size and be a little bit more specific. So if I'm aiming for something like at 16 point or 12 point or whatever the case might be, we can go through and kind of dial that in. I also keep the pin selected here, so this just kind of stays on top as I'm working. So for example, if I jumped into a letter here, let's say we were working on the letter I, so right now the width is 65 on that. I'm just going to remember that, so when I do this test here, you'll see what I mean. But if I go through and I widen this up, you can start to see that that actually starts to make a difference. So back to the color thing that I was talking about a little bit earlier, if you wanted to go and adjust things like that, you kind of get some real-time feedback, which is pretty handy when you're designing a typeface. So for now, I think that's probably enough talking about type testing, because we probably filled a good amount of time on that. So let's jump in and talk some characters. So in the last episode, we were focusing on letters like C, R, and U. And E, I think, too, is one we did. I wanted to jump back a little bit to the uppercase because we also have some similar characters there that we can jump in and take care of. So we will grab our trusty image here, and I'm going to jump over to the C, and what we're going to be focusing on is the C and the G to start things out here. And it's pretty much going to be similar to what we did last time, where I'm going to pull the O, oops, not the H, let's do the G, there we go. And we'll grab our vector from the O, vector shape from the O. And then this is pretty much going to be a lot of rinse and repeat from last time, so I do apologize if that was a little bit repetitive for you. But we can kind of go through and adjust these. So what I'm going to do here is pretty much just try and get a shape going here that we like. It does kind of condense in a little bit on this side. Similar to last time with the lowercase c, I'm going to focus on one half of the letter, and then we'll flip it and do the other half. So actually I probably could even just chop this off for the moment. And then I think what I'll probably do next here is we're just going to open these corners to make editing this piece a little bit easier. Simply because I want this to look like these corners are a little bit more of like a 90-degree angle or terminal, if that's the right word. Now, one thing that is kind of basic with this font that we discovered with the C a little bit is that I think there was some kind of different ways that they handled determining how this terminates here. So typically what I've been taught is that you don't want the letter, we'll go to the big camera here, you don't want the letter to kind of flare out and then come to the end. You kind of want it to feel more like an even width or weight that just terminates. So one of the issues that I'm kind of working against here in these scans, and I kind of see this when I look at the printed material, is I think sometimes it flares out just a touch. And who knows why it was that way. I guess it's just kind of how they designed it. It was kind of something that I've been accepting a little bit more, especially when I saw things, you know, like the I think was it the U, that really didn't seem to have many like optical corrections or anything like that to it. They pretty much just rotated around the letter N and called it a day. So it gives me a little bit of insight as to probably how they were designing this. And I really do need to look up a little bit more history on this typeface, to be honest with you. I do have the original manual here, which I suppose I probably could dig for it, but my desk is a mess if we're being truthful. That's what you don't see on screen. But I do know sometimes that the different foundries, if a typeface became popular, that not saying necessarily Ludlow did this with Record Gothic here, but they might have been racing just to kind of capture that excitement in the market and hopefully sell a few you know, pieces of type or something like that. So that's something that I keep in mind, is that sometimes maybe these were rushed or something like that. And I think at some point, maybe when we get a little bit closer to release, I think it would be fun to probably go through and do a bit more research as well, in addition to the design research that I'm doing, and uncover a little bit more of the history of this. But for the time being, it's just kind of, you know, understanding the typeface as I go through and recreate these characters, and it's kind of fun just to see some of these details here. So I think that C is looking pretty good to the scan. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna hop off of that one real quick, and I know the G is a little bit different, but what I'm gonna do, just kind of nudge that into place there. I do want to go and just see how much this kind of altered or changed. So we'll kind of get this positioned over it. Also, I'm not worrying about spacing yet, so we're not quite to that point. But I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to merge all the shapes, so I get rid of my open corners here. I'm not going to worry about that. I am noticing that this does kind of maybe come down a little bit more than the C did. I may leave that for now, just for consistency's sake. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to the H. We're going to grab a couple of pieces from that. And make sure I press the correct key on my keyboard. There we go. And just kind of push these into place here and just see where we're at. I am going to have to make some different corrections here. That's fine though. But we'll line things up for the moment. These up piece to piece. There we go. And just kind of see where we're sitting. At some point here, I'll probably rerun Wordamat again, and maybe play around with that and just kind of see this a little bit more in context. But for now, I think what we're doing is a-okay. So one thing I do notice right off the bat is that if I were to leave this, I do get a bit of a blobbiness there. And it looks like this was probably nudged in a little bit. Do I have more than 1 point there? I hope I don't have more than 1 point. I do have more than 1 point there. It was a good catch. So what we'll do, we're just going to kind of notch that in just a little bit. And this is something that I did notice in the printed specimen a little bit earlier. And then we'll go and kind of bring this outer line in a little bit. And then the big thing I noticed is that this inner swoosh seems to kind of have a softer resolve. It kind of just works its way up into the vertical stem there. So I'm just going to kind of do my best to get a good shape there. Again, we could go through and throw Super Tool on it. Actually, looks like we're pretty close to a good curve there, according to Super Tool. But basically what I'm looking at is, you know, we've got this arch. It's kind of an upside down problem of what we have with the N, where we've got this curving in here and going into the vertical stem. I've got the opposite with the G, but I am using a little bit more weight here too in that connection. So I think right now that's at 55, which actually isn't too far off the N. Well, I guess it is. It's 10 points off because my measurement took place more up there, but I do keep in mind too that uppercase letters tend to be a little bit thicker or beefier than lowercase letters, so I could be okay with that for now. I may go back and revisit that though, or I suppose I could even take a look at it now. I guess this also kind of comes into a question of contrast as well, so I'm keeping that in mind. You know, I could go through and make it a little bit thinner like that. That gets us down into the 40s. And maybe this is a little bit more indicative of how that would have been. Or maybe we are kind of modernizing it a little bit. The other thing I'm keeping in mind too, I think I talked about this earlier, is that sometimes our eyes need a little bit more weight on the bottom of things too, so I am keeping a few things in mind, I guess, is what's to say on that, but yeah, maybe something like that. Doesn't look too bad, and I'm kind of trusting my eye here a little bit too. The other thing probably worth noting as well is this is also going into a thicker vertical stroke than on my lowercase letters. So, but if I jump back, I mean, honestly, it doesn't look too bad. So I think we can probably live with that. So what we will do is we're going to unlock that image, and then we're going to jump over here. Let's throw some side bearings for now. I'm just going to use the O. And if I type in a word, I don't have a, I guess we'll use an O in lieu of an A. I think that looks pretty decent there. Yeah, I don't think that's too bad for now. So, I guess the only other thing I was wondering, and I don't know if this really... No. It's probably somewhere between the H and the O. The G has a little bit more of a flatter side to this. Maybe I'll leave that H for now. The H side bearing for now. But I guess more than anything, that kind of covers off those letters. So a couple other ones, well, I guess one other one, maybe two other ones that I want to do. I want to take a look. Actually, we're going to start with U first, because I may have a plan for the R that might leverage us into some new letters here. So let's go back and grab our image again. And we'll jump over to the U. And what I'm hoping, I'm not saying this will work, but what I'm hoping is that we can kind of use H and the O to set up these two curves here. I'm not exactly certain, as I'm looking at this, that the bottom of the O and the bottom of the U are the same, but this typeface has already surprised me, so I guess we'll just kind of roll with this and see what we see. And actually I probably should have given it more credit, because that's honestly a lot better than I thought it would be. What I'm going to do, just to close open paths, so we're going to do that. This is honestly where I wish I could... Actually, can I group things? I don't think I've ever used a grouping command. I have not. Okay. Let's see here. If we center Let's grab everything here. I guess we'll use our side bearings to center things. So 34 and 34. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, how far off are we? That's 30 units away. That is 40 units away. That's 35, 30. There we go. Okay. This is kind of a backwards way of doing it. To be fair, I've been an Illustrator all day, so my brain's probably thinking more like Illustrator than Glyphs at the moment. But I think that gets us somewhere I can work from. So, so with all that said and all that done, it looks like to a certain point this curve is similar, but then it does change as we go here. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab these two, delete that. Actually, I think one other thing I'm going to do is we'll focus on one half at a time, and just go. Just gonna see what this does for us. So I may end up kind of redrawing these curves to some degree. Could be a little, could be a lot. I guess we'll find out. But kind of what I'm trying to do is line up roughly where I think the curve starts. So maybe somewhere around there. And then what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and connect everything up. There we go. And we'll just kind of play around with these a little bit. So I'm basically just using my Shift and Option key to drag some points around and try and mimic that curve. Now there's one other thing that I'm also taking a look at here. I think I've mentioned this before on the channel, is that I'm making sure, if we just kind of pick on the outer curve here because it's easier to see, that these 2 points here aren't crossing up in some weird ways. So, you know, a big no-no is that we don't want this curve here to shoot past, you know, the other one, or you know, if we really wanted to make it weird, do something like that. Those are kind of no-nos in type design, or probably just good vector design in general. But typically what I'm trying to do is just create, so we've got maybe like a nice 45-ish degree angle there. Or even another way to look at it is that the length of this one is maybe roughly the length of this one. It's not a hard and fast rule that I've discovered or figured out. It's kind of, you know, if it looks close enough, then it is sort of deal. But those are some of the things that I'm kind of keeping in mind as I'm putting these vectors together. And then, of course, obviously we need to make sure that it's matching up the scan in the background too. So I think something like that seems to be working out pretty well. And I think what I'm actually going to do is we're just going to copy, paste, and mirror this. Grab that. And just kind of punch that in. There we go. And we have the U. Now, one thing that is worth keeping in mind is sometimes the two stems on a U might be different weights. I'm thinking in this case, because this seems to be an expansion typeface, I think both of these would have a uniform weight, which in this case is 70 units on both sides, so I'm going to leave that. But that's something that I want to point out. You probably see this a little bit more in serif fonts or high contrast sans serif fonts. If it uses a translation model instead of an expansion model. But that's something to keep in mind. But I think we've got a pretty serviceable U there. So we'll go ahead and we'll throw some side bearings on that. I think for now we'll call the U good at that point. Seems to match up pretty well too. Perfect. Alright, so I guess we probably could just move right along to the R. So, the reason that I was doing the R second, like we are now, is this is going to be introducing kind of new variable into our type, and that is a diagonal line. And while that doesn't sound like a whole exciting thing, I promise you it might actually be a little bit, because this is going to get us to start thinking about letters like V, W, X, Y, Z, K, even the N and the M in the uppercase. We can kind of use this as kind of a nice little easy entry into that world of the diagonal shape. So that is actually one thing I will point out as well. So we have our dimensions palette on the side here. We'll go off on a mini rant here real quick. The one thing I love about the dimensions panel is that I can go through and type in dimensions and, you know, I don't have to remember anything. The downside is that it doesn't have a diagonal in it. So if I go back to my screen here, there's no like V, which would probably be the best character to use in my opinion. I'm kind of surprised they never threw anything like that in there, because you know, it's not really like a quote-unquote traditional control character, at least how I learned it, but it is an important one. And I guess for some reason never made the cut. So if anybody from Glyphs is listening or watching, or somebody who writes plugins, throw that in there, because I think it would be useful. I try not to plead too much for things, because I know software development isn't easy, but you know, who knows? Maybe someday that'll pop up there, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. But anyway, back to the task at hand. So one thing that I'm looking at here is that I want this to kind of feel like it's roughly the same width or same weight as the vertical stroke, and so I'm actually going to get rid of my reference because I think we're pretty good there. But if I'm looking at this, you've got this thick vertical stroke here, and then this diagonal kind of looks anemic next to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of bump this over until I think it looks better. Well, maybe I'll do something like that. Because again, what we're looking at is when these two join. We don't want that to kind of feel like a big blob, so maybe something like that. I'm also kind of looking down here in my blurry preview as well. This is something that kind of comes in handy because, you know, if I go too thin, to me, my eye, that gets a little more obvious that needs some weight, versus if I go back to kind of where I was, it seems to do well there. But maybe something like that, question mark, as I kind of back up. I think that's working pretty well. And of course, one other thing we can do is we can grab all of our characters here. Again, this is where Wordomat is so amazing. Go through, grab everybody, come to Wordomat. Let's do capitalize this time. And so if I back up here a little bit, it's just a little bit bigger so it's easier to see on screen. But if I look at words like riced, read, some of these, it looks like it's working out fairly well. Again, my caps are going to look maybe a touch thicker than lowercase, but again, that's okay. I think that's okay. It's not super. It's not jumping out a super amount or a tremendous amount, so I think I'm going to be okay with that for now. That is kind of the nice part too with doing a revival, is that a lot of this stuff, especially if it's a decent typeface, if it was made well in the first place, you really don't have a ton of things to kind of go back and question here. So I'm actually really grateful for that as I'm designing this. But what's nice about this with the R is, you know, we could go through, we could go back, maybe pull the Uppercase N. Actually, I got that lined up about perfect. And what we'll do here, we'll grab both of those, just kind of line these up. Looks like the end's going to be about the same width as the H, which is fine. You know, actually for something like this, I may just go and do this. I'm just kind of seeing how this was laid out. So I'm just gonna grab these bottom 2 points and we'll just bring these over. So for the time being, I'm just gonna worry about the left side of the line. Let's get a little bit thicker at the bottom there, that's okay. Try and keep this as even as we can. One other thing I'm going to do is just add a node further up. That'll just make this easier when we go and do this. So if we kind of go back here, another point there as well, just so we don't have that little, that looks like a little chip at the bottom there. I don't want any chipped teeth in my typeface. But if we do something like that, that'll work. Now what's worth keeping in mind too is that this stroke here is almost at a taller angle than this one, but I guess what the other thing I'm looking at too is you know, we kind of need to have a thick and a thin too, so usually with the N it would go thin for the 2 vertical strokes, and then the middle bar here would be thicker. And it is kind of, I don't know, it looks a little weird to me that this almost feels backwards. One thing I might do here is we're just going to make a copy of the layer here. If I did this out of curiosity, we're going to take these 2 vertical lines, we're going to bump those back to 65, which is our thin for a straight line. And if I just add a touch thicker, I don't know if this does anything or not. Maybe it doesn't. But I'm thinking about the stroke direction and order here, and to me that looks a little more normal. I don't know if that's actually the case or not. I don't know if that's actually the case or not, but what we'll do is we're just going to unlock that image. We're going to get that out of the way. One thing I can do then is bring the other one back. We can kind of do a side-by-side comparison here. You probably have to look fairly close at this, so the one on the right is as it is in the original, the one on the left is what I was doing here. At some point I'll probably look back while I'm editing this episode and decide which one I like, because I tend to do that sometimes, but at least for now, I might just stick with kind of that alternate way that I drew it. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of back out. I'm gonna probably take a pause there, because I want to sleep on that a little bit, but I also know that once I figure out what I'm doing with the N, it's going to translate what I do with the M, the W, the V, etc. It's kind of the domino effect that we're all used to at this point. In the meantime, we're just gonna grab the uppercase letters for now. So we'll do all caps. Just do a little bit of word of magic here. So that's kind of where we're at. I guess one thing I just realized is that I don't think I put... Nope, I did not put spacing on the N, so that's probably why that was looking a little bit off. There we go. Now we got some spacing on it. There we go. So probably what I'll do is maybe give this a comparison to some of the specimen pages. I think we've got enough letters now where we can start to do that. And I'm gonna kind of have to decide, you know, if I feel that I've got some, you know, heavier spots or some lighter spots. It is kind of tough too, because sometimes you have things like the letter T that just, it's going to take up less space, or a letter L, which is, you know, going to have some open blank space there. And that's probably where I'll do a little bit of deciding, you know, how true do I want to stay to the typeface, or you know, do I want to break from that a little bit and maybe do something that maybe modern designers might expect, you know, so maybe that L gets a little bit shorter, or the T gets a little bit narrower, or something like that. Not saying it necessarily works in this case, it might not, but those are some things that I might consider or think about. The other thing that I could do is I could swap the N around. Go back and redo that, because sometimes this gives us an answer too. Do I notice a difference there? So this is the version of the letter N that have the thicker vertical strokes, and then the diagonals a little bit narrower. Sometimes you get a little bit of insight that maybe they intended that if you were typing in all caps or using this in all caps for something. But I'm thinking for now, let me actually go back. So the H may end up getting a little bit more spacing to either side. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to update everything here. Oops. Wrong zoom button. There we go. This is kind of the joy of going back and checking your work, because sometimes it's not a letter design thing, sometimes it's just a spacing thing if things are starting to feel too close together. So I did, I think, approximately 5 points on each side, so 10 points in space in total, and I think that kind of opens things up a little bit better. So that might be a good move for now, but again, with proofing, there's a lot of back and forth and whatnot, and I think at some point we'll probably sit down and maybe do kind of more of a proper type critique. And if that is something you're interested in seeing how that's done, even though I guess I'm going to be critiquing myself, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section and let me know if that's something that you'd be interested in watching. But basically, an episode like that, just to forewarn everybody, would probably be taking place in something like a PDF and not in Glyphs. But I still think it's an important part of the process. So I think, though, for the time being, we'll leave it there. So yeah, that is, I think, some pretty good progress for today. We're making some good progress with the alphabet, and you know, kind of looking at this, I know we've got a lot of the angled characters left to go. But I think what you'll find at this point is that we'll probably start going through a lot of these characters fairly quickly. We do have a couple oddball ones. I know everybody's probably looking at, you know, the S's or maybe the lowercase g, because those tend to be tricky letters, if I can get my words out right, for some people, but I'm not really too worried about those. I think we can make fairly short order of those. But with all that said, if you are enjoying this, it always helps me to see people hitting that like button, and make sure you subscribe as well if you haven't done that already, because you'll probably want to see when new episodes come out, especially as we get closer to the end of this and start making this into a fully functional working typeface. I do have some exciting plans, you know, beyond this this weight of the alphabet. One thing, if you've done a little bit of research on Record Gothic, is that there were multiple weights and styles. There was some extended versions of this as well. And if that's something you're interested in seeing, you know, how we expand this into a full family, which I think would be a lot of fun, let me know down in the comments as well. But with that said, as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next episode.